Welcome back. It is everyone's favorite time of day, and that is time for your living environment lesson. So before we left for break, we were talking about body systems, specifically the respiratory and circulatory systems. But now we're going to start talking about some other body systems that you may or may not have heard of. Today, we're going to be focusing on the excretory system. So whenever you see this word excretory or excrete, it means to release something, and specifically release wastes. So today's aim is, how does our body control metabolic or metabolism waste byproducts? Okay, so whenever you see this word metabolism, we're talking about the sum of chemical reactions in your body. Okay, and when you see this word byproducts, we're just talking about that word products. What is produced by these chemical reactions, and how do we get rid of it? So today's do now is, how does our body rid itself of toxic waste? Give specific examples. So as always, pause this video, answer that question on your paper, and then press play when you're ready to go over it. Okay, so the function of the excretory system as a whole. Oh, I cannot write. I forgot how to write over the break. Oh, let's try that one more time. All right, the function of the excretory system as a whole is to filter and release wastes. Okay, now what are some examples of waste products that we need to know? Well, we just finished up talking about one when we were talking about the respiratory system, and that is your lungs. Okay, we know that our lungs are going to filter and release CO2 from your body. I sincerely apologize for my handwriting. I seem to have forgotten how to write over the break, but hopefully as we go through this video, it gets better. But one example is that your lungs filter and release that CO2 from the body. So every time you exhale, you're getting rid of some of that toxic waste. Right, which leads us to the excretory system introduction. Okay, so the metabolic wastes of humans include carbon dioxide, water, salts, and urea. So we've heard about carbon dioxide and we've heard about water, but we haven't really talked about salts or urea yet. And today we're going to figure out, what are they involved with? So excretory wastes pass from the cells into the blood and are carried to the excretory organs that expel them from the body. So when you see this word expel, again, that just means release. The excretory organs include the lungs, liver, sweat glands, and kidneys. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we need to note, what are the metabolic waste products that we're talking about? So when chemical reactions in our body occur, what waste products are produced? Well, we need to know that carbon dioxide is produced, water is produced, salt, and urea. So we've heard about carbon dioxide and water before. Remember, those are products of cellular respiration. But today, again, we're going to be talking about salt and urea and how those two things are excreted as well. But now, before we move on to that, I want you guys to stop and write your hypothesis on your paper. Go ahead and give me a prediction. How do each of these organs excrete waste? So again, write a hypothesis on your paper. You should already know something about the lungs, but take a guess about how the sweat glands, liver, and kidneys excrete or release wastes. Okay, and as soon as you have done that, press play on this video, and we're going to talk about each of those in depth. Right, the very first organ of the excretory system that we need to know is the lungs. We've talked about the lungs before. They are the centerpiece of your respiratory system. They're involved in breathing, but they're also involved in the excretory system because they get rid of wastes. And those two wastes that they're going to get rid of are carbon dioxide and water, specifically water vapor. Remember that these are both products of cellular respiration. So every time you exhale or breathe out, you're breathing out two waste products, CO2 and water. Right, but now we've got a few other organs that we haven't talked about yet, or a few other features of the body. First thing we need to talk about is the sweat glands. Now, I'm sure you've heard of your sweat glands before. You may have noticed these when you step outside on a really hot day. Oh no, my iPad went out. Hold on. Oh, there it goes. All right, fingers crossed it stays. You may have noticed your sweat glands before. If you step outside on a really hot day, or if you go and play basketball with your friends, you're going to start sweating. That's all thanks to your sweat glands. Oh my gosh, this iPad keeps going out. All right, we're gonna hope it stays now. Your sweat glands are going to excrete or release salt, water, and very small amounts of urea. Now, I know you're probably wondering, what the heck is urea? But I'm not going to tell you yet. I want you to figure it out. So, when the body becomes too warm, extra heat is lost through sweating. You might have also heard this called perspiration. So, sweat is another word for perspiration, or you perspirate. So, the evaporation of sweat removes heat and cools the body. So, this process of sweating actually allows for the regulation of temperature. So, sweating helps keep your body temperature at homeostasis. Now, sweat is made of 98% water, 2% salt, and very little urea. So, that's the reason why, if some sweat has ever dripped into your mouth, it's kind of salty. And that's because it's made of 2% salt. Now, this picture that you see right here will pop up on the Regents a lot. You will see it pretty frequently. And it's always going to ask you, what is structure X? You need to know that structure X is a sweat gland. So that coiled structure that you see right here is where sweat is produced and then excreted up here through your skin. So this is the outer layer of your skin. Let's see, I'll do that in a different color, maybe blue. Which means that this structure that you see right here is actually going to be a hair follicle, okay? So whenever you see this picture, X is always talking about a sweat gland, that coiled structure where sweat is produced and then released through your skin. All right, the next part of the excretory system we need to be aware of is the liver. So your liver is a pretty handy organ. It's in charge of filtering your blood and making sure your blood stays safe. So your liver is going to excrete harmful substances from the blood, such as ammonia, drugs, and alcohol. Okay, the liver is in charge of, again, filtering those harmful substances out of your blood. So it's going to break down excess amino acids to form urea, which is then sent to the kidneys. Again, here's that word urea. I haven't told you what it is yet, but note here that we see it's going to the kidneys. Think about, what do you know that the kidneys are involved with, and see if you can figure out, what is urea, right? But the liver also produces bile, which is going to aid in the breakdown of fats, as well as break down red blood cells. Now, here on your screen, you'll see two pictures. Both of these are a liver. This one here on the left is a healthy liver. This liver on the right is what's known as cirrhosis. And cirrhosis is what happens to people who maybe have an alcohol problem and drink a lot or take a lot of drugs. And essentially what happens is your liver starts to break down, okay? And it leads to liver failure, which means that it's not going to be I can't speak, to be able to filter your blood. And it can actually lead to death. Okay, so it's super, super important to treat your liver with kindness. Don't overwork it, guys. Don't do it. Right, and that leads us to the last part of our excretory system, which is probably the first thing you think of when you hear excretory system, and that is the kidneys. So your kidneys are in charge of filtering urea from the blood. Again, there's that word urea. And urea is going to be used to make urine. Okay, so urea is what urine is made out of. Now, your kidneys are made up of millions of things called nephrons, which are subunits of the kidneys that actually filter that blood and filter out that waste products. So here you'll see a cross section of a kidney. So it's essentially if we took a kidney and chopped it in half. And if we zoom in to each of these units right here, we'll see that these units right here are the nephrons. So that is where the blood is actually being filtered. Now you may notice that we've got these tiny red structures that go up alongside the nephrons. It's a really tiny blood vessel that you may know the name of, all right? These are our capillaries. So capillaries are directly involved with our nephrons because they have to allow the waste to diffuse across the membrane and be filtered. Right. All right, this is the very last thing I'm going to go over with you guys today, and that is the urinary system. So again, whenever you see the excretory system, you might automatically think of the urinary system. So the urinary system is a big portion of your excretory system, and it's super, super important. in order to allow you to release wastes. But we need to know the different parts that make up this system. So the urinary system is consisted of the kidneys, the ureters, the urinary bladder, and the urethra. So your kidneys, you have two of them in your body. You've got one on either side of you, okay? And the kidneys are in charge of filtering urea from the blood in order to create urine. So again, in this picture, these two kidney bean-like structures are your kidneys. And that is where the urea is filtered from the blood to produce urine. But after that urine is produced, it's going to flow into something we call the ureters. So again, because you have two kidneys, you actually have two ureters. And these are those tubes that connect the kidneys to your bladder. And that is how urine passes from the kidneys to the bladder. So urine is going to flow down these ureters and go into the bladder. But both of those ureters connect to the same bladder. So you only have one of those. I cannot draw a circle. You only have one urinary bladder. And this is where urine is stored. Okay, which finally, when you're finally ready to go to the bathroom, that urine is going to be released from the body through something that's called your urethra. So your urethra is the tube that carries that urine from the bladder to the outside of the body. So again, the urethra is how that urine is expelled or excreted from your body. All right, and that is all I have for you guys today. So as soon as you are done with this, I want you to go ahead and fill out your exit ticket and press submit, okay? If you have any questions, send me a message on Remind, but other than that, have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys tomorrow.